That ABC executives are reportedly very worried about Ripa, fearing she could come back on the show since it's live and go rogue and, quote, pull an Ann Curry on live TV by breaking script and maybe exposing something they don't want to expose. Ripa called out sick earlier this week, and I heard one to Turks and Caicos after co-host Michael Strahan announced he was leaving GMA and didn't give her, reportedly, leaving her show for GMA, reportedly didn't give her any notice. There's another report, too, that says that they weren't even talking to each other, only through intermediaries.
Yeah, but them being worried about her going rogue, I mean, wouldn't you always be worried about that with somebody who's on live television who feels like they've been...
Well, it's a real threat. I mean, as Dana knows, she could go rogue at any minute. Have you ever been tempted to go rogue?
No.
You ever think about that?
I
Shut the prompter down. It's Perino time.
If I ever did, that would be like the most... well, first of all, our show isn't scripted.
Ever.
That would be the most highly rated moment in Fox history if you went rogue on the 5.
But how do you work next to somebody and never talk to them?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't talking to, and what if the intermediaries stop talking to each other, and then you have to get another? It could have like layers and layers of intermediaries.
Do you ever say to Gutfeld, "Talk to my agent"? Put your hand up like that.
My agent. We have the same agent.
That's a problem.
Wouldn't really work. Dana says hi.
Yeah.
So we've got brand new polls from the presidential race. We want to run them by. These are Fox News polls.
Okay,
They're
great.
from Indiana and California. Indiana is May 5th. California is June 7th. In Indiana, Trump 41, Cruz 33, 16 for Kasich. In California, the final contest of the season, 49 for Trump, 22 Kasich, 20 for Kasich, 22 for Cruz.
What stands out with that, Dana?
Well, in Indiana, I would say I would say Ted Cruz's team is probably pretty happy with that number, and they're working it really hard. They have a few weeks, right? So that contest is May 3rd, so it's like 2 weeks, to see if they can close that gap. The California number is amazing for Trump.
He's doubling them.
Yeah. And the California Republicans are thinking we're finally relevant in a primary. This hasn't happened in my lifetime where it mattered what California thought.
Right.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about a contested convention and what if somebody gets close to 1237 but not 1237. Well, Reince Priebus was in Hollywood, Florida, and once again is saying if you don't hit that magic number, you're not automatically the nominee.
Politics is a team sport, and we can't win unless we rally around whoever becomes our nominee. The rules say you have to have 1,237 delegates to be the nominee. We aren't going to hand a nomination to anyone with a plurality, no matter how close they get to 1237. You need a majority. And as the old phrase goes, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.
So does he mean this? Do you think the GOP is willing and planning to give the nomination to someone who didn't get the most votes if nobody gets the majority?
I think he's saying what the rules are. The rules are 1237, and everybody has known that, and that if you don't hit 1237, it will go to a second ballot. And if that's the case, then everybody knew the rules. I don't think it's fair to anybody to change the rules at this point. Now, public pressure is going to be intense. It's like, well, what do you mean? Like, if you get to 1236, you're not going to give it? Now, there's a school of thought that says, of course, you're going to give it to him at that point. There's another school of thought that says, we played by the rules. You had to get to 1237, and if you didn't, you had to have a delegate strategy.
So which one will carry the day, do you think?
I don't know. But I admire him for saying that there are rules and we're going to stick to them. And for the Trump people who are upset about it, Reince Priebus also gave a little bit of, threw some shade at the Never Trump people, saying whoever the nominee is going to be, the Republican Party has to unite behind them. That's really Reince's job, is to find the unity candidate. And if the primary states don't produce somebody that can get to 1237, that's what conventions are for. We haven't had to have a contested convention in 40 years.
Right.
So I think it'll be okay.
I think the pressure mounts when or if Trump gets to 1,000. When he gets over 1,000, with the way he's been on the stump now, saying, "Oh,
who's calling?"
FaceTime.
Someone wants to FaceTime me? I didn't even know that was possible."
Someone who's not watching this show, obviously.
Yeah,
it's probably Gutfeld.
I'm already FaceTiming with America. Is that enough? That's incredible. I never even saw that happen before.
It's unbelievable. Your car's double parked.
So, Dana, after 1,000, the pressure's going to be unbelievable.
Well, what about the pressure from the other side of the people who say, well, if you didn't get to 1237 and they're close, then it's supposed to go to a second ballot. I think the pressure could be immense from either side. I think the best thing to do is to follow the rules as we have them, as they are set, not change them just because somebody gets very close.
Well, the gloves have been off with the candidates for sure. I mean, they need to kiss and make up at the end. I think the ultimate unifier could be Hillary Clinton because they're going to have to unify around that.
Right.
She has laid out some VP picks that she's reportedly considering.
In today's
anyway.
New York Times.
This is in the Times. Tim Kaine, Mark Warner, Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, former Governor Deval Patrick of Massachusetts, Thomas E. Perez, and Elizabeth Warren.
I don't believe any of this. I'm sorry. I'm going to go a little rogue. I don't think this is true. I think that her team
Cut her mic.
is. I think that her team is so manipulative that they don't want us to focus on the fact that she's got this FBI investigation hanging over her head, that she's so unpopular, that Bernie Sanders has been able to win all of these contests. So what's the best way to get people to stop talking about those things?
Of course.
Say, oh, I've got VP choices, and so we'll just throw out some names and see a little trial balloon. I don't believe any of those, to be honest. She's not going to choose Elizabeth Warren. Give me a break. That's not going to happen.
They don't even like each other.
She's going to need Elizabeth Warren's help, but I don't think that's true. And here's my thought on the vice presidential choice. Don't choose somebody just because they're going to check off a box for you. Choose somebody who you think would actually be able to govern and would be a good counselor. And don't try to choose somebody for their electoral votes. Dick Cheney brought 3 electoral votes from Wyoming. That's not why he was chosen as vice president.
No, of course not. And it doesn't matter. I mean, when
it's
Hillary
1%.
Clinton is...
That's true. It doesn't matter. Your vice presidential choice, I think Bill Galston reported this in the Wall Street Journal, around 1% of your votes will come because of your vice presidential choice. So it really doesn't matter.
Right, you can only screw it up. So speaking of the rules, there is no rule against giving speeches to Wall Street for $250,000 a pop. But it's becoming increasingly tough, it seems to me, for Hillary Clinton to explain why she's not releasing the transcripts of those speeches. Will she be able to keep that position all the way through to November, do you believe?
I don't think she will be able to, because it is not like it's just the crazy vast right-wing conspiracy asking for the transcripts. Now you actually have Senator Gillibrand here of New York saying, yeah, I think that there should probably be some transparency here. Yeah. So that's not easy for her. I go back to just bad judgment and decision-making by Hillary Clinton from the beginning. She knew she was going to run for president. Her husband has lots of money. She didn't need the money, but she did the speeches anyway, and now she's paying a price for that.
There's another wave to this, and the other wave is the AP report that looked at her 85 to 90 appearances/speeches that she gave that have links to lobbyist organizations that are in front of her when she was Secretary of State. And then in those years, 2013 to 2015, and she wants to run for president again. That's a perception? That's a problem.
I think that when you see this desire for an outsider this year on the Republican side, but also you have the anti-establishment folks on the Democratic side, it's partly because of this behavior from both sides. And she's going to pay a price for that. But ultimately, are the demographics in the country in her favor? Yes. Is her organization in much better shape than the Republicans for a general election candidacy? Absolutely. So she'll weather the storm. I don't know what the Wall Street transcripts say. You can imagine that they're kind of like, I don't think she says anything in there like, don't worry, I'm not going to regulate the big banks. I mean, they're probably really boring speeches.
Yeah, but reportedly nobody's going to be able to find out because her staff would take the cell phones from people who were in the crowds and stuff. So the only person that has them.
But apparently she requested that the speeches be recorded.
Right.
So
one thing we know, whatever she said was trite. Because everything she said.
It was probably filled with cliches, too.
Because you know, Dana, children are our future. By the way, Dana, speaking of going rogue, has said she's not leaving. She's going to stay right here on the couch for the next segment. She's got a never heard account of George W. Bush inside the Oval Office. Every presidential candidate needs to hear it. It's pretty great. It's coming up.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Dana Perino's book was a bestseller for 14 weeks on the New York Times list. So after a little while, she was able to put some new excerpts into her brand new book and put this now out on paperback, which means it's bendable, it's cheaper, and now it's got more stuff. The name of the book is, and the good news is, Dana, we talked about this on radio a little bit. The one story that stuck out with me, especially in light of what the president's been dealing with, especially in his final year, is the story that you relayed and opened up about when Ed Gillespie talked to the president. You called up and said, can I put this story in?
Yeah,
he decides to come back to the White House.
One of the most popular things in the book were these stories of what it was like to work with President Bush behind the scenes. So I wanted to add more, but I'd told all my good stories. But I knew of this story from Ed Gillespie, so I included it. And Ed was being asked to come in and be the counselor to the president for the last 18 months. The president calls him in. He has this interview with him, and he says, Ed, you're very good at communicating with the American people, and that's one audience, and that's very important. But there's some things you need to know. Everybody listens to everything I say. So the allies listen to what I say, and if they sense any weakness on my part, they'll be gone tomorrow. The enemies, our enemies, they listen to what I say, and if they sense any weakness on my part, they will ramp up on us. And there's another group, and it's our troops. And if they sense any weakness on my part or equivocation, then it will be bad for their morale. And at some point, Ed, you are going to want me to say something that's very popular, and sounds really good to that first audience, the American public. But you won't know that I know that it's going to hurt the troops, and it's going to hurt their morale. And you need to know something right now. I will never do that.
Wow.
And Ed said, where do I sign?
And that was it. I mean,
Yeah.
and then they finished those.
And then Ed and I had a chance to work with Ed Gillespie and, of course, the president until the end of the administration. And it was one of those moments that a lot of people had when working for a president. And I'm not saying I believe that President Obama's team would have similar stories like this. Well, in terms of their personal relationship with him, I thought it was important that President Bush have a chance to be known as the person, not just for his policies or his politics. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book and added these stories.
Well, what I love about that story so apropos today is the president comes out with a huge story in The Atlantic about his foreign policy and his views. In it, he puts down NATO allies in Saudi Arabia as free riders and kind of mocks some people for what they did. And I'm thinking that goes directly against what the president you work for knew, because our enemies see us as weak in Cuba and Iran by the way we've given in, and Russia by not confronting. And they also see these comments, and it hits home. They don't get a subscription to The Atlantic, but they see everything.
They hear it. They know
They
about
all
it.
read that, too. The Saudis were completely freaked out by it.
Right. So you have to think about all your different audiences whenever you're speaking.
And you wanted your readers to know what President Bush was like with the troops. And
That's true. And also there's another great story in there about Chad Pfeiffer. He is the first wounded warrior to play on the web.com tour, which I understand is like right before you can go into the
Right before
the
you get
Pro
to the
Tour.
PGA Tour.
And this is a double amputee. He had never played golf before he was injured in Iraq. He comes back, a young man that is also injured, says to him, hey, do you want to go on this golf thing with us today? And he says, ugh, golf isn't a sport. But then he felt bad, and he's like, well, the guy was trying. So he went on the excursion, he hit his first ball, and he fell in love with the sport. He got invited to play with President Bush twice at the Warrior Open. Brian, you've been there a couple of times.
Twice, yeah.
And Chad Pfeiffer just captures the president's imagination. I think he hit a hole-in-one, and the president said, you want to go play at the President's Cup with me? And takes Chad there. And what Chad says is it's not all the fancy stuff that he got to do with President Bush that meant a lot to him. It was that the president treated him like a regular guy.
He does.
And then he would say, that's not a very good shot. And the president's not afraid to just treat them as civilians when they come back and make this transition. So the good news for Chad Pfeiffer is he comes back. He's now living in Texas with his family, and he is going to be like the first pro golfer, wounded warrior. It's amazing.
That is amazing. One of my girls, weirdly enough, was playing golf down in Florida over the winter. And Bush drives up in a golf cart, looks at her and says, you're not a very good golfer. And drives on. True story.
That's true.
Which I think is true.
I think it is.
She wasn't hurt.
She
thank
thought it
you
was
so much for
hilarious.
sharing that. And again, the book is.
Thank you.
And the good news is, and you can catch Jane. She's got a long day today. Thanks for.
We're going to be on the 5 live tonight. Special edition, all of us. Even Gutfeld,
you're gonna
Kimberly,
bring the other
Bowling,
four?
Juan Williams. We're going to be there.
All right, great. We're going to watch.
Outstanding.
Dana, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Dana.